Have you ever tried to understand a whole country by looking at just one day? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We've got a single edition of the Kathmandu Post from a random Friday, and we're going to use it to build a snapshot of modern Nepal, its struggles, its tensions, and you know what? Also its triumphs. So let's jump in and see what one day can tell us.
And right away, we're hit with this, the most arresting number from that day's paper, just 238. No explanation, nothing. But for anyone living in the capital, this single number is one of the most important and frankly, worrying pieces of data you could see.
So what in the world does 238 mean? It was Kathmandu's air quality index. And to put that in perspective, look at this chart. Anything over 200 lands you squarely in the very unhealthy zone. So this isn't some abstract statistic. This is the reality of the air people were breathing that day, and it's a huge indicator of one of the city's biggest crises. Okay, so to make sense of all the stories from this one day, we've organized them into a few key themes. We're going to start with those environmental pressures, then look at a really tough situation facing the younger generation. After that, we'll zoom out to the bigger political and economic scene, and we'll wrap up by looking at how the culture is fighting back.
First up, mounting environmental pressures. The subtitle here really says it all, a nation feeling the heat. And as you're about to see, that's true in more ways than one.
And yeah, that toxic air in Kathmandu, that was just part of the story. On the exact same day, the paper was reporting that the southern plains of the country were getting slammed by a crazy heat wave. Temperatures were already hitting 40 degrees Celsius, that's 104 Fahrenheit, and they were warning it could get even hotter. So you've got this two-front environmental war going on, poisonous air in the city and brutal heat in the plains.
All right, so now let's shift from the physical climate to the social one. This brings us to our next theme, a generation's double bind. Because two huge stories from this one day paint this really complicated and frankly troubling picture for young people in Nepal. They're basically caught between their physical world and their digital one. This quote, pulled straight from a headline that day, it really captures the heart of the problem, doesn't it? Kids are literally being squeezed out of physical spaces by all the construction, and the solution is to just hand them a phone. But, as another story shows, that digital world, well, it has some very real dangers of its own. And here is that double bind laid out side by side. On the one hand, a report about how kids in Kathmandu literally have nowhere to play. On the other hand, a major warning that the online world they're escaping to is filled with threats of abuse and exploitation. They're trapped. There's no safe physical world, and there's no safe digital one either. So, why are these online spaces so dangerous? Well, the investigation in the Post really points to this perfect storm of factors. You've got widespread digital addiction, you've got parents who aren't always able to supervise, and a generally low level of digital literacy. You mix all that together, and it just dramatically increases how vulnerable kids are to exploitation. Okay, so from the social issues facing the next generation, we're going to zoom out. Let's look at the major forces shaping the entire nation. This is all about geopolitical and economic tensions. Basically, Nepal trying to navigate these huge pressures, both from outside its borders and from right there at home.
So the big international story for the day was this visit from a top U.S. diplomat. And the Kathmandu Post made it clear this wasn't just some routine visit. No, they framed it as a clear sign of this growing competition for influence between the U.S. and China, with Nepal, which is literally sandwiched between India and China, right in the middle of it all.
And while these global superpowers are kind of circling, there are major stories breaking on the home front too. On that same day, a really well-known industrialist was arrested. The allegations were serious, manipulating the market with fake trades. It's just a stark reminder of the internal battles against corruption that are also going on.
So, with all this outside pressure, what do the people of Nepal actually want? Well, a poll in the paper gives us this fascinating glimpse. Half the people, a clear 50%, say the priority should be economic gains, just focus on the money. But look at the other half. It's split almost perfectly three ways, between maintaining balance, focusing on national interest, and staying non-aligned. It shows this clear desire to get ahead, but real uncertainty about the best way to do it.
But look, a country's story is never just its problems. And tucked away among all these tough headlines, we find our final theme, culture that is pushing back. And these are some truly incredible stories of resilience, of defiance, and of reclamation. So the first example comes from the world of art. The paper highlighted this project called Hamro Sahas, Hamro Kala, which means our courage, our art. And what they're doing is using this beautiful traditional style of painting to challenge really deep-seated social problems like the dowry system and child marriage. It's just a brilliant way to use cultural heritage to build a better future.
And then there was this headline.
I mean, this is the kind of line that just stops you in your tracks. It starts with what these women were told, quote, "We don't teach that to females." And then, that simple, powerful response. They learned anyway.
That quote was the intro to an incredible story about women all across Nepal who were just shattering these long-held gender and caste barriers. They are learning to play traditional folk instruments that their culture had forbidden them from even touching for generations. This is so much more than music. It is a profound act of social and cultural rebellion.
So let's just step back and review the snapshot we got from a single day's paper. We saw an environment under siege from pollution and extreme heat. We saw a young generation caught between a shrinking physical world and a dangerous digital one. We saw a nation trying to play a high-stakes geopolitical game while also fighting corruption at home. And through it all, we saw a culture actively pushing back, using its art and its music as acts of defiance.
When you lay it all out like that, the stories from just one Friday show a nation really at a crossroads, feeling pressure from almost every single direction. It's an environment in crisis, a generation in a bind, and a geopolitical tightrope walk. But it also shows a culture with this incredible strength to push back. And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. With all these pressures mounting, how does a nation like Nepal chart its path forward?